Aloha! Come along with me for an elevator ride to the subject of today's program. I'm Paul Udell. For many years I was an anchorman here in Hawaii and on the mainland. Now I'm a volunteer at Ōlelo and trying to help them out with a new program that's called Getting to Know You. Getting to really know a person beyond the things that everybody knows. Our guest today is Dee Jay Mailer. She's the CEO of Kamehameha Schools. She is soon going to leave there after 10 years. But she has had an extensive career, not only here, but on the mainland and even in Europe. So we're on our way to interview her today. She's our subject.
You know, when you have an opportunity, and even if you think it's a stretch, and you don't know if you can succeed, it doesn't matter. Walk through that door if there's something on the other end that you have a passion for.
Tell me about your childhood.
Well, I was born and raised here in Hawaii. My parents are both from Hawaii, born and raised here. My dad was born and raised on the Big Island, and he grew up on the sugar plantation up in Ō'lelo, which I spent many of my elementary years playing there with my grandfather, who was the Luna up there. My mother is Native Hawaiian, born and raised here on Oahu. She was one of twins. They call them the Holt twins. And if you talk to people from the years of class of 44, 43, the Holt twins are widely known here in Hawaii. They're beautiful women who danced and sang and were coveted by a lot of men, I'm told. As I meet them in their later years, they remind me that they dated my mother or my auntie. So I come from these islands, and my family comes from these islands, and I have been so privileged and honored to be part of the Beatty family, as well as the Holt family.
You're an only child?
Yes.
Lonely?
No, not at all. Often wonder why I'm an only child. Perhaps I was not a good child, I'm not sure. But no, I've never been lonely because, as I said, my Auntie Bobby, who's my mom's twin, had 3 children of her own. And so they became my siblings. And every time I wanted to have friends to play with, they were always there. And I spent much of my time, my young time, in Kailua, where I could escape to my auntie, who would allow me to be kolohe, whereas if I came home to my mom, I really had to be prim and proper. So I had the best of both worlds.
Of course, you graduated from Kamehameha,
Yes.
but a lot of people probably don't know that you went to Punahou for a number of years. Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, a lot of people from Punahou know that. I'm still considered one of the alumni of Punahou and proud to be that. But yeah, I started out actually at Kainalu Elementary, and then my mother wanted me to go to a private school. And luckily, she had this wonderful friend, Richard Waterhouse, part of the Waterhouse family. He worked with her. And so she was talking to him about her desire for me to go to Punahou, and we didn't have the money in those days to do that. And he said, I will pay for your daughter's education as long as she gives me her report cards at the end of every single year. And if she can get an A- average, I will continue to support her. And Richard lived several houses down from us, so you would believe it, every single year I had to produce my report card.
That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
You felt that?
Not from him, but going to Punahou, which is an excellent school, I felt a lot of pressure to succeed because every child there was doing the same. And so I remember doing well in a particular class, and the teachers would give me all of the positive feedback, and then they'd say, so we want you to step up and go to the honors class next year.
Then you go to Kamehameha. What are the circumstances?
You know, I think I was in 7th grade when my cousins, Donna and Val, were going to Kamehameha. And I got to know them in that school setting as well as their friends. And I was so comfortable whenever I was with Kamehameha people. So one day I got a chance to go on what's called an exchange program. You spend half a day at Kamehameha. And I did, and I loved it. And so at that point, I told my mom that I wanted to go to Kamehameha, and she was devastated.
Really?
Yeah, because she had wanted me to go to Punahou. I was being successful there. Richard Waterhouse was, my benefactor and her close friend, and she couldn't understand why I would want to change schools. And so I explained to her that I would continue to succeed and I would continue to make her proud of me, but that it was my choice and I wanted to go there because it felt like family to me.
So you go to Kamehameha. The pressure's kind of off, but still on in a way.
Oh, yeah.
How did it change you? What was the difference?
Kamehameha is a very family-oriented place. I don't know how to explain it except you feel it when you walk through those doors. People tell me even today that when they walk on the campus and they're with all of our haumana, it's such an aloha spirit. And granted, we had our cliques and we had our issues, and we still do today. But the sense in the environment there is one of acceptance, is one of support. And so I went there knowing that I would have my family around me. And maybe it was my Hawaiian side saying, you know, we want you to exercise this now. But I went and I put pressure on myself to excel in the things that I chose to do. So no one had to tell me to do this or to step into this class, and I always had a choice to do so. And it was a wonderful experience, fabulous experience.
So you graduate.
Yes.
And what are your plans? What are you going to do then?
Well, I was going to go to the University of California in Santa Barbara. And why did I choose that place? Because it was on the beach, because it was a cool place to be that everybody said you should go to UCSB, because they had a great volleyball team, and you could go down to the beach and there were some cute guys there.
You met your husband he was surfing and you were watching or something here, right?
Yeah, I met Donnie here on the beach. He's a very good surfer. I am not. So we dated twice. And the second date was not the greatest. He would say that and I would say that because he took me to Clockwork Orange. And I know that dates me, but that is not a romantic movie. And so after that, we sort of called it quits and just were friends.
So you're on the California coast there,
Yeah.
but you come back, you go to UH and you become a nurse.
Yeah.
And you went to work at Kapiolani.
Right.
And you're delivering babies.
Yes.
And what is that like?
Fabulous. You know, right now, the biggest joy I have is making lives count and helping people get from point A to point B and be joyful. And so delivering babies is the very beginning of that journey. So I was a nurse in labor and delivery, and I have a lot of friends still at Kapiolani who I worked with there. And it was a fabulous environment because it was a teaching environment where doctors would come in as interns and we would work together closely and I would be teaching them. And so it was the first time that actually a doctor would say to me, "Thank you for teaching me." But there are some times when things don't happen the way you want it to happen. Mm-hmm. And I was involved with one of those cases. One day a woman was in labor. Towards the end of her labor, her baby got into trouble. And before she could deliver that baby, the cord, the umbilical cord, was crushed against the head and against the mom inside of her womb. And so I, as we do in all labor and delivery, is I was doing a check on her, and the baby went into crisis. And so I had to leave my hand in her womb after I checked her to keep the baby's head from compressing the baby's pico. And so I kept my hand there while they wheeled her to the operating room for her cesarean. And only after the doctor actually was able to do the surgery and begin to remove the baby, I could take my hand out. And at that moment, it wasn't about what I learned technically. It was just, I am doing the best I can to save a life. And it was a team effort, because while I was doing my part, the doctor was doing her part. It was amazing. And that baby survived.
How on earth do you go from delivering babies to running Kaiser Permanente? That's a huge leap.
Yes.
How long did it take and how did that happen?
Baby steps.
Baby steps.
Baby steps. I think throughout all my life, doors have opened for me, and I have just chosen to walk through them. And so doors opened for me at Kapiolani. I was a nurse, I was a good nurse, and my director of nursing said, "You know, DJ, what do you want to do with the rest of your life?" And I said, "Gee, I don't know, but I'd like to work in nursing administration." So I did, and she said, "Well, in order to prepare you for the widest of choices, you need to get your executive master's degree in business." And so I did. And that wasn't easy because I was not business-minded. I was clinically minded. Healthcare was everything to me. I hated economics. I did not like accounting, but oh well, I learned them. Mm-hmm. I graduated with my executive MBA at the University of Hawaii. And then all of a sudden, doors opened. And so I ended up at Kaiser Permanente as an assistant clinic manager, responsible for the facilities and the operations of the clinic versus the clinical side.
And then you take a job as a number 2 person, I think, in California for a health organization, for profit. How was that?
Yeah. Well, I will tell you that Kaiser is an HMO, and thus is a system that is highly integrated, all the way from the physicians to the nurses to the receptionists to labs. Everything is within the system, and I loved it. I loved it because as a patient, you were never lost. The system always had you. And it was also a fabulous training ground for me. I am so thrilled and thankful for what Kaiser gave to me, but I wanted to find out what the for-profit world looked like in healthcare, because I couldn't imagine how for-profit matches with taking care of patients.
Did you like it?
It was tough. It was tough because my mind was on caring for members and patients, but the board's mind often was on how do we take care of the shareholders.
How do we make money?
And so it's true, they understood that we were making money based on patient care, so they weren't oblivious to that. But to have that dichotomy didn't resonate for me.
Wasn't satisfying.
So I then left.
You left and you went to Switzerland to an organization which actually is a global organization, although it's based there, and you're trying to deal with AIDS and malaria and tuberculosis.
Yes.
How was that?
It was fabulous. Again, another door
That's a leap.
One day I'm working in San Francisco, and the next day I'm telling my husband, how would you like to go to Geneva, Switzerland? I didn't know anything about being in Europe. I knew a little bit of French from Kamehameha, and I arrived in Geneva and was met by someone from the UN. And from that moment on, I was in the United Nations system. Being in that system, it's highly bureaucratic, and so one of the frustrations was how decisions were made on behalf of health for the entire world. And so you had a lot of people, diplomats, around tables, and they were talking about policy and things, and taking a lot of time on those non-essential issues when, in fact, many of the people in their countries were passing on because of AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria.
And they're debating policy issues.
And they're debating, and it's not unique to the UN. But it is unique about what happens when you sit around a table and you lose sight of who you're serving. So I got to go out in country, and I got to see what we were doing in terms of prevention and treatment for those diseases. I got to see whole towns wiped out. I got to see whole generations wiped out so that the only people left were the babies and the kupuna to take care. I got to see where teachers, healthcare workers were gone. And so this isn't just about treating diseases, but it's about actually rebuilding communities. It was a fabulous experience. And so it gives me a huge perspective of what pain and suffering is and how people can rise through that and do well.
How did it happen that you came back here? Did they search for you, you searched for them, or what happened?
Literally, I was sitting on my patio in Geneva looking out at this vineyard, lovely vineyard, and friends from Kailua came into town. And while we were talking, they said, did you know that they're looking for the CEO of Kamehameha? And I didn't. Of course I didn't. I was in Geneva. But the next day, I was catching a train to Paris, and I called my good friend, Jim Scott, who's the president of Punahou. Jim and I grew up together. We went to Punahou together. And I asked him, what do you think? You know, is it a stretch that I could actually qualify for this role? And he said, it's not a stretch, DJ. It's what Kamehameha needs. And so I went home, thought about it. I got an email at the same time from my boss at Kaiser, my prior boss, and she said, DJ, I got an email from one of the trustees at Kamehameha, Diane Plotz. And Diane Plotz is asking me, my boss, if she would be interested in the job at Kamehameha because Diane had heard that the CEO of Kaiser was a Kamehameha School graduate.
But it wasn't the CEO job that you had. You were a chief operating officer, right? COO.
Well, at Kaiser, I became the COO, but after my boss. So my boss sent it to me and said, DJ, they must be looking for you. So with that email and my friends, I put in my application.
So you've been here almost 10 years now. What have you learned here, you yourself? What has it brought to you?
At Kamehameha.
At Kamehameha,
Yeah.
yes.
The incredible mission that we have, the fact that I can actually not only help change individual lives as I did as a nurse, but that I could actually help change the lives of communities and families and a whole people, a Hawaiian people, with tremendous resources. That's not only our financial resources, but it's our people resources. It's people who deeply care about this place, and it's our lands. I understood for the first time in my life that we come from these lands and that we need to treasure them and take care of them. And that in order for us to take care of the place we come from, we have to take care of the people who will steward that place for generations to come.
Talk to me about the one episode, which was a serious episode at Kamehameha, and that was the lawsuit that was filed challenging the discriminatory practices that only Native Hawaiians could come in. And there was a settlement, and it came out that the settlement was $7 million, wasn't supposed to come out, did come out. How involved were you with that decision? How did you feel about that whole thing?
I was very much involved with the trustees in all of the decision-making process throughout that terrible case, terrible case. The decisions were hard ones, but necessary ones, because at stake was our ability to operate the trust based on Pauahi's wishes. This was her private trust. When she passes away, she gives her own lands to her people. And any one of us who would pass our own wealth on to our family, we'd say, why is anyone mucking around in that? And yet that's what happened with that lawsuit. And in fact, by taking that trust away from us, we were taking one of the last treasures that my people had. So we fought long and hard for that. But the beauty of that case was that we didn't fight alone. The entire state of Hawaii fought with us.
Some people had a concern that by settling the case, rather than letting it go to the higher court and having once and for all it decided, that you're just inviting somebody else to come along and say, well, I'd like $7 million too, let me file a lawsuit, so this is going to be a never-ending thing. Was it that you felt you couldn't take the chance that you might lose at the higher court?
Well, no one in my position should take the chance that we would lose in any court, in any court. But the reality is that people continue or have continued to sue us, and we have won every time. And I believe that because our mission is not done, and I believe because this is a private trust, that is why we have been able to sustain those successes through the court system. We will continue to fight that, and we will never give up our ability to exercise the trust the way we were asked to do.
Let's talk about what you've learned. Have you been the subject of discrimination because you're a woman? There's a great talk about the glass ceiling. You can only go so far. You seem to have gone pretty far, but have you experienced that? Discrimination because you're a woman?
No, I'm asked that question a lot, and I haven't. I really haven't. In fact, sometimes being a woman is an advantage. And I know there are some men out there that feel that often they don't get an equal opportunity because there's a woman they're competing against. So from my perspective, it's been an even playing field.
You're paid very well, I'm sure, well over $500,000 a year. How do you feel about that, about money? I'm sure it wasn't something that you dreamed about when you were delivering babies over at Kamehameha.
No. It's not anything I've ever dreamed about, to be real honest with you. I've walked into roles because I love the role and I love the work to be done. And I've really been a poor negotiator about money. In fact, I never have negotiated. When someone says, here's what we offer you, I say, okay, great.
Looks good to me.
Yeah, and sometimes people have told me, well, why did you settle for less than what other CEOs get paid in Hawaii? CEOs that have equal complexity or not even. And I say, because that's not why I went to Kamehameha. I went to Kamehameha because I wanted to do something on behalf of our people.
For young people watching us, or for parents, what are the lessons you can pass on? I mean, what have you learned about succeeding in your lifetime? What have you learned?
One is that you always have to stay attached to things that you love. When you go to work and you have to fake your passion around something, it doesn't work. So I've always stayed attached to work that makes my heart sing. Second, my success, I think, has been partly because I care more about other people succeeding than I do myself. It brings ultimate joy to me to see someone who, again, has moved from A to B, and B is success. Mm-hmm. And I love that. And so the selfish part of me is the joy I get from that. And then the third part is about walking through doors. You know, when you have an opportunity, and even if you think it's a stretch, and you don't know if you can succeed, it doesn't matter. Walk through that door if there's something on the other end that you have a passion for.
That seems to be a problem here in Hawaii. People, I don't really want to take a chance on that. I want to be safe. I don't want to go to the mainland and try that. I don't want to do this. I don't know if it'll succeed, so I'll do something that I'm certain of. Yeah. Have you seen that as you've passed through the years here?
Not only here in Hawaii, but as I travel the world, I see quite a few people that say, gee, I can't do that. I don't know how, or, you know, I don't have connections. And that's too bad, because all of us, everyone that I've talked to that might have that expression, they have had opportunities. And the only thing that stopped them was their own perception of their ability. Mm-hmm. And I say, it has nothing to do with your ability. It is who you are. Take who you are and trust that you've got worth, and trust that that's going to play out. And if it doesn't, if you don't get that job, that's okay. You know, wipe yourself off, move on. I have been turned down in my life.
Really?
Yes, and it is not a good place to be, but it doesn't frame or shape me.
But why is that? What made you like that?
My parents. My parents.
When you have a hard decision to make, or things don't go the way you think that they ought to be going, what do you depend on? Where do you turn to try to decide what to do? Because we all go through those things, you know.
I turn to my husband because he knows me best. My parents have both passed away, but my husband knows me really well, and he knows when to call me on pure thoughts, and he knows how to get me back to center. When I'm at work, I call out to our princess. I look at what she was, the character that she brought, mm-hmm. the values that she held, and what her whole intent on life was. She was a woman of incredible aloha, of incredible ha'aha'a, humility, but huge imi na'auao, which is wisdom. And she was very focused on what was most important to her, her keiki. And so whenever I have a question, I think about, what would she want me to do? Mm-hmm. What did she hire me to do? And in what way would she do it? And in those situations, she has never been wrong.
I'm sure with all your Hawaiian background and so forth, it is very deep. But I'm sure there are people that ever say, you know, she didn't look too Hawaiian to me. Have you run into that?
And you're being kind.
Well,
of course. You know, Hawaiians look very different these days, very different. You know, there are many mixtures of us. I am one. And so I have encountered that when I grew up as a teenager. You know, there were some incidences where I was called haole. You know, and I am haole, but I'm also Hawaiian. Mm-hmm. So, yes, it has been that for me. But I don't let someone's perception of me stop me. Because I believe that when people get to know you and understand your heritage and where you come from and what you believe in, then all of those first perceptions go away. And that's what it's been like for me at Kamehameha. Of course, when I started out, I am sure people, and in fact I've heard people say, she's Hawaiian, you know, and some are gracious and some are not so gracious. And yet over the 10 years I've been there, everyone that I have met and have a relationship with, they don't view me as Hawaiian or not Hawaiian anymore. They view me as DJ.
Are you a religious person?
Yes.
In what way?
I believe that Akua watches over us every day, and I'm thankful to God for everything that is here for us. I'm also responsible as a Christian to behave in ways that honor the privilege of being here on this earth. And so I always look towards my scripture, and I always look towards thoughts for the day that bring my spirituality into play. And I've often said in my quiet times when things get too hard for me to bear, okay, God, I'm letting go now. I'm in your hands. We should all be grateful for the lives we have here. And we should also realize that in order to have those lives here, we need to create happiness for others as well.
Finally, where do you go from here? I mean, you've had all these positions. I can't see you retiring. What is next for you after you leave Kamehameha?
Oh, gosh. I don't even want to talk about leaving Kamehameha. It's hard. I've been trying to hide behind the facade of I'm just graduating. But the reality is I am once again leaving my schools. I know they'll always be there for me. And so with that, I can say goodbye temporarily. And so where do I go from here? I go to have some time with my granddaughter, Halia, my daughter Renee, and my daughter Brandy, and they live in Idaho. The reality of our family is we're split between two worlds. So I'm going to stay with them for a while and just be a nana and a mom and a wife and a gardener and whatever I darn well please. And that'll take about 3 to 6 months. Either I'm going to get tired or they're going to kick me out. And then I'm going to look for the next pathway that leads to my heart. And I'm looking forward to that journey. And I'm going to wait for all doors to open.
Well, wish you luck.
Thank you.
And I thank you for sharing your life with us.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for allowing me to do that.